Welcome to Future Role Model, a podcast that praises the unconventional and redefines what it means to be a role model. I am your host, Natasha Pearl Hansen, and today I have an amazing guest and a dear friend of mine, Ariel Kashanchi, in the house.
Hi. I'm so surprised you got my last name right. That's like the best.
Jacqueline said that too when I had her on, and I was like, I know how to pronounce my friends' names.
Most of my friends do not.
Can't?
No.
That's funny.
No.
I do, I think if you're going to call somebody your friend, you should at least investigate how to properly pronounce their name.
I mean, it's a start. It's the start of a good friend. Now I can put you like at the upper echelon of friends.
I bumped up a couple notches.
Yeah.
There's two skills that I have in life, and one is always knowing where the restrooms are. I have like a restroom 2 cents. And number two is I can pronounce almost any last name.
Restrooms and last names. That's a good skill.
Those are that's the only reason I'm good for traveling with, guys.
You can walk into a mall and know where the bathrooms are.
I just can sense it. Mm-hmm.
It's like bathroom intuition.
Yeah. Skills, guys. So Ariel and I don't know, how long have we been friends now? Not crazy long.
Not like 2-3 years?
Yeah, 2-3 years. Started hanging out, though, a lot more in the last year because we live in the same neighborhood now.
Yeah.
And that's why I got to bring you along in my car with me today.
Yeah,
we got to catch up in the car. Ariel is you're one of those rare gems that is actually from Los Angeles, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I like hearing your stories about growing up in the type of family you did because I don't know anybody else with your specific background. And I don't really know that many people from Los Angeles because this is just not a city people are from.
No, it's really not. Yeah.
So give a little bit of background for anybody listening, where you grew up, and then we'll kind of get into what your family life was like.
Okay.
So
I've lived in LA since I was, I want to say, 4 years old. I left for a while and lived in New York, but I grew up here. My family is Persian Jewish, which there's a big Persian Jewish community in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really specifically Beverly Hills, but I grew up in the Valley.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can tell from my voice, which I try so hard to not talk in my Valley accent. Like, I want to sound intelligent.
Well, you are intelligent. Thank God.
I am intelligent, yeah, but
it's a lot of work.
My vocal fries really like just take over. Sometimes sound like a Kardashian.
We'll get there.
But yeah, my parents are potheads.
Mm-hmm.
And like had an arranged marriage, and like my mom had to bleed on a sheet to prove that she was a virgin. And like that's like the life that they envisioned for me, and
which is so romantic.
I mean, there's nothing better than losing your virginity on your wedding night and then the next day presenting a white sheet to your mother-in-law to prove that you were chaste.
Oh my God. That is such a creep. That's horrifying.
It's so weird.
It's so strange.
And so misogynistic too. Mm-hmm.
But that's such a normal for so many people still, which is bizarre.
There's a surgery that it's called hymenoplasty,
mm-hmm.
where they sew your hymen back up. So when you finally...
How do they even find it? Doesn't it disappear after a while?
It's still there.
What?
You still have it. I still have it. It's just torn.
Yeah.
The skin is still I think it would be hard to sew in, but it's there.
People do it. Can you reverse a circumcision too?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, maybe you can get a foreskin implant.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is why I didn't go into medicine apparently. But you've told me about how your parents brought you up a little bit in the past, but I know you definitely had some things that were unconventional in the way that you grew up.
Yeah.
So let's get into that a little bit.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, let me start by saying, so when we first came to the U.S., because I was born in Iran, when we first came to the U.S., we lived in Kansas City,
mm-hmm.
which my uncle owned a nightclub there, and my dad was a bartender. It was like a redneck hillbilly, like there was a big bull that people would ride, like that kind of nightclub.
I feel like that should have been a movie, like from Iran to the
from Iran
to the plains
to Kansas City.
Yeah,
it was it was weird to have my dad bartending there because he's like this like Middle Eastern man with like, you know, he's super hairy and just like has a thick accent at like a, you know, like a really rednecky place. But it was an interesting place for me because they would sneak me in. And I'm like 4 years old and I'm at this nightclub and like watching everyone interact. And it was so fascinating.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was like, and I still like to this day when I smell like a dive bar, like bourbon and cigarettes and maraschino cherries that are just like in the wood, like that brings back childhood memories. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I remember.
Did you people watch a lot when you were there?
Yeah.
I feel like you would have.
Oh my God.
You're a super intuitive person and you're a very aware person of other people. So I feel like maybe that would have been like a good setting stone for you to have gotten that way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was.
Being in that environment.
It was so fascinating to me because I'd never seen anything like it before. Like what kind of, you know, little girl hangs out at a bar?
Right. And did you speak English at this point?
Yeah, I was learning English. So like we lived in Israel for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came to the US, I spoke Farsi and Hebrew. And then I started learning English. This is okay. I actually learned a word. This is how fucked up my childhood is. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was very wealthy and very misogynistic. And like, he never hid the fact that he had all these mistresses. Like he would bring them home and like kick terrible person.
Wow.
And so he had me, we go, Silver Fox was the name of the club. So we go to Silver Fox. It's like earlier in the day because he's having an affair with one of the waitresses and he has me interpret. So he's like, tell her I'm going to meet her at this time. Tell her this, tell her that. And then he's like, tell her to wear a bra. I don't like saggy tits. I didn't know how to say bra in English.
But you knew tits.
I was like boobs, you know. I knew how to say
yeah.
You know, I pointed. I was like, he wants you to wear it because he doesn't want your boobs to fall. And it's a corset. It's a corset. How do you say it in Farsi?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, that's a bra. And I'm like, he wants you to wear a bra. It's such a weird memory.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's always been embedded in my head that I'm like, this is how I learned this word in this weird setting, interpreting from my piece of shit grandfather.
With a mistress.
Like, yeah, his mistress.
Whoa, that's really, really strange.
So, I mean, like on so many levels.
Yeah,
right?
but also like it's always interesting what little moments you remember from your childhood, like these vignettes that you have. Like I don't remember. I was reminiscing the other day with somebody and I was like, why do I remember this specific moment? But things like that are really like, they really kind of shape you as you get older, honestly.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah.
Which I know that you're going through some of that now, trying to regress back into your childhood. But anyway, we'll get there. So in that time, like when you were coming from the Middle East, like, I don't know what it was like for you transitioning into the States. Like, did you experience any like negative
racism?
Treatment?
Yeah, 100%.
Because you were in the South too, which is
like in the Midwest.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
But yeah, because it was also like a few years after there was a hostage crisis.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that? Yeah.
Yes.
So like, I think it was in 79. So Iran took a bunch of American hostages. So this country didn't like people from Iran very much.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of been a thing for a long time.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at that time it was particularly like
really heated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was awkward.
So in that time, like being that young and having, you know, influences like that in your life that were negative, did you have any role models or anybody that you specifically looked up to?
I had an uncle I really liked who was the owner of that club, like back then.
Was he a silver fox?
You know, this is, okay, I mean, let's get creepy. I had Oedipus complex. Like I had a crush on my uncle. It was so weird. And eventually, like, I grew out of it. And, you know, I mean, like, I think it was like for a month. And it's my dad wasn't around. When we first came here, my dad had to stay in Israel because they kept him in the military. Yeah. And so my uncle became my surrogate dad. And then I had my Oedipus complex. Yeah. And then my dad came back and then it was normal.
Which as kids, I feel like that's more common than we think, that you have crushes on random. Like, I really liked my cousin for a while when I was a kid. I thought he was just cool. You know, it wasn't, I was 5. Like, it was harmless.
It's not like sexual.
It's not like sexual. But I liked one of my cousins, and like for like a month or like whatever it was, I was like, oh, I love playing with it. And then it just goes away. And then I remember when Arrested Development came out, and George Michael has a crush on Maybe. And I was like,
I'm not alone. It has to happen to so many kids.
I'm sure. Nobody talks about it.
Experiencing these emotions, you don't really know what they are. And here's somebody who's in front of you who you like. And
crushes at that point, at that age, are like tripping people or playing tag. It's like funny. It's funny stuff. But anyway, okay. So you looked up to your uncle. Did you have anybody like in the celebrity realm or anything in that?
No, okay, not at that age, but when I got a little older, so I always knew that my parents are not great at being parents.
Yeah.
So I knew not to kind of like take their advice or guidance or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would watch Full House, and Bob Saget was my role model.
Oh my God, Danny Tanner.
I mean, which he's like the dirtiest comic.
He's so dirty.
But, you know, not on that show.
Yeah.
You know, he was rational and like he was a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
And a single dad.
And a single dad. Yeah. He was like
made
doing
it freaking work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw Bob Saget perform stand-up. Or no, it was when I saw his Aristocrats. Have you ever seen the Aristocrats?
Yeah.
When I was doing improv in Chicago, the Aristocrats that was when that documentary had just came out. So everybody was kind of doing their version of it around the improv community.
Yeah.
And saw his version, and I was like, oh, wow, this guy is not cookie cutter.
I mean, but he probably also, after years of having to suppress it, I'm sure when he was on the show, he couldn't do stand-up the way that
I'm sure
normally does. So
all those things he was just scribbling down on paper. Eventually, he was like,
here it is. Yeah.
So at what point did you leave the Midwest/South and move out to Los Angeles?
I was like 5 when we came to LA.
Okay, so you weren't in the South that long.
I wasn't there long, no. Okay. But it's still like I have family there, so I still go back, and that feels more like home a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though LA is where I grew up.
Yeah.
I think like Kansas City just kind of like.
What was that first memory of you as a kid leaving? Because that's a huge transition from Iran to Kansas City and then to LA.
Iran to Israel to Kansas City. Which
that's a lot of different stuff going on.
Yeah, all these different cultures.
Yeah. And so when you first moved out here, by then you spoke English.
I spoke English.
And what was kind of your situation like then? Like, what was your status with your family? Did you like being home?
Well, we were poor.
Mm-hmm.
So when we first came here, we were living in Van Nuys, which, I mean, it's not a terrible neighborhood, but back then it wasn't very good. So we were living in Van Nuys in a 1-bedroom apartment with my my uncle. There were like 9 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Like we would sleep all over the floors and like, but it was fun because I had a cousin who was my age and, you know, we had our shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
But they sent me to this private school for kindergarten.
Ooh.
And that was terrible. It was like a Jewish private school. And my parents never taught me real like Judaism at home. So I would go in and do things that were inappropriate and not realize it. And so, I mean, like I was always like the outsider kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I didn't have parents that I could like, I guess I kind of grew up like being my own role model.
Yeah.
Like kind of just going with my gut. Like, well, this is the right thing to do. Always be honest. Always don't take advantage of people. Be a decent.
You kind of watched your parents do certain things, and I think you and I have talked about this with our moms in particular. But like, you've watched your parents do things and decided at a young age, like, I'm not going to do that.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, like I remember catching my mom in a lie, like when I was like one of my earliest memories of speaking. I remember catching her in a lie. And so I realized, I'm like, all right, well, this woman is not to be trusted. And so like, I got to kind of fend for myself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of would like, I would do the opposite of what they told me to do, or whatever their approach was. I would just go in the opposite direction. So they were kind of like reverse role models.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So like when you were growing up here, did you ever get into any trouble, or what kind of shenanigans did you and your cousin get into, or were you a pretty good kid for the most part?
I was a really good kid. I was like straight A student. I was in honors programs. I mean, I did everything right. And then when I got into high school, I started hanging out with gang members.
Because you're in LA.
I mean,
it's just like impossible not to.
Well, yeah, they're like around and like they were interesting to me. Like I was like, oh, they're I don't know. I've always been fascinated by people who just kind of create their own world. Gang members, like they live by a different code than the rest of society.
Right.
And also, like back then, I didn't have a car. I wasn't old enough to drive. And they all had cars. So if I wanted to ditch school, I would go and hang out with a bunch of gang members.
Yeah.
Like, climb a fence and
you had to go older. You had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have gangs where I grew up, so I just had the choice to only hang out with people that could buy me booze, whoever they were.
What was that? Was that like adults?
Yeah, it was like, people that had just graduated high school or like people that my friends, older brothers, friends, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I always thought it'd be interesting to grow up in a space like where my cousins grew up, where there was actually, more. I don't mean to say like diversity in the sense that like gangs are diverse, but more to be curious about. Because where I grew up was pretty stable.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Well, that's like growing up in LA, they bus in kids from different cities for diversity.
Yeah.
Which was really cool because, I mean, I was exposed to every kind of person growing up. So I could relate to people a little better.
Which is super important.
Yeah. Like, I'd rather that than like a private school education where I'm super sheltered and I don't know how to interact with different kinds of people. And so it was cool. I like that.
So when you hung out with these gang members, like, did anything, is there any moment that like,
have I ever been an accessory?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was. Probably a couple times.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was not good.
What was the hairiest situation you got in hanging out with people like that?
Okay. So
that you can talk about without getting murdered.
Okay. So this is something that this is a weird, wasn't really a crime. But so I'm at a party with a bunch of messy gang member types. And I'm 15 and I start taking tequila shots. So I'm cutting the lemon myself, like with a giant like butcher's knife. So I'm cutting a lemon, taking shots with the chaser, and I'm very young. I go into a blackout. I cut my wrist and I have a 7-inch.
It's a massive scar.
It's a big scar on my wrist.
With a butter knife?
No, like a butcher knife.
Oh, I was like...
No, not about like a...
I was like you jammed that thing in there. Holy crap.
I cut my own wrist and I was gushing blood and they just poured tequila on it to clean it.
What?
And then I was like, I didn't want my parents to know. So I didn't go home for a couple days. Like I kept making up excuses. And my parents were like, oh, okay, you're spending the night at so-and-so's. I'm like, yeah. I mean, they just didn't. And then I came home and I made this insane, elaborate story about how I was at a party and I was in the kitchen and I slipped and I went and I grabbed the first thing I saw, which was a cabinet door. And then there was a nail sticking out and that nail pierced my skin and cut me as I was falling down. I mean, this is like a ridiculous. And my parents to this day still think that that's what happened to me.
Oh my God.
And so,
do they listen to podcasts?
I don't think they know what podcasts are. I don't think they know what the podcast.
I was just talking about that about my grandma.
Your grandma.
My grandma is just like, my mom gets what podcasts are. My dad doesn't even know how to send a text message. So like that, we'll just put him in a different category. But my grandma thinks podcasts are the radio. It's just the radio or not the radio. So now I just have to tell her I'm on the radio today because she just thinks everything is the radio. She thinks stand-up comedy is dance. Like anything on a stage is dance, So she
thinks you're like an interpretive dancer.
Yeah. I mean, she knows she comes and sees my comedy, but she still calls it my dance routine or whatever like she wants to call it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she would never understand what a podcast was. Like, it's just not going to happen in her lifetime.
You've never played it for her?
No, but I podcasted with her around and she still doesn't get it. She just thinks I'm on the radio, which is, I mean, sure.
I mean,
same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You really have to understand the internet to understand.
And just when you get to that age, you're just done with, learning how things work.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you cut yourself. I mean, that's not too bad. That could have been really shitty.
Yeah. It could have. I mean, if it was like a few inches over, I wouldn't have made it.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like your behavior in general, you were pretty on point.
I mean, yeah. When I managed to skip 11th grade when I was in high school. And so I graduated when I was 16.
Yep.
So despite not having like like real like parental figures, like I called my parents by their first names for most of my life.
Yeah. And that's a big thing I've noticed with a lot of friends, and especially in the comedy or entertainment community, because people have very vastly varying relationships with their family and reasons what make them go into entertainment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, a lot of people will blame their parents for their shortcomings.
Yeah.
But most people I see will take their parents and their family situation and kind of use that as like a catapult to try and get further away from what that situation was.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
you either go
what most people choose to do, that end up like trying to pursue something really difficult.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I'm just not going to do that because that's what they did and it didn't work and I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So did you know at that young of age that you wanted to get into entertainment?
Yeah. Well, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a singer.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like reenact scenes from the show Fame in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And, like, listen to and also I would listen to music that was 10 years old just because we were like immigrants and like they didn't like my parents didn't play like American music at home. And like I had like a tape of songs from the 70s that I would listen to.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so I wanted to be a singer and my mom was like, absolutely not. And then, I mean, it was always something I wanted to do, but I just didn't I was going to go to medical school.
Yeah.
I like graduated high school early so I could start college early and get into medical school, but that didn't happen.
What did happen with you after you graduated at 16?
So I did my undergrad. In the middle of all of that, I got into law school. There was a law school where a friend of the family was a dean, and my family decided that I should be a lawyer. And I was like, all right. And I went and I took the LSAT, and I did really well. And at 19, I started law school. And a month in, I was like, I want to act. I want to do something creative. And so I dropped out.
Ugh,
I dropped out of law school at 19, which 19-year-olds have no business being in law school.
No.
And it's just not like...
Everybody should take from 18 to 20 and just go and travel the world. Like everybody should just get a little bit of a fund to have to go travel the world like kind of shittily.
Yeah, like
with a backpack,
yeah.
like not a fancy travel the world, just like have to rough it a little bit and like stay on people's couches or like not know where you're going to sleep some nights. Just have like the world smack you around a little bit. Because everybody would benefit from that, I feel like.
Makes you a better person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So then what? What did you do after you dropped out?
So then I pursued acting for a while with like whatever side jobs I could get. And because of my look, so I wanted to be like a more comedic actress. But I would only get called in for like,
attractive
sexy,
girlfriend number one.
Yeah. Like show up to the audition in your bikini, which is just not my, like in LA, there are girls 1,000 times better looking than me who are more suited for these things. So it's like, I didn't have a chance. And
it sucks that they group everybody that's quote unquote attractive into a category when it's like that's not necessarily the niche you want to go into.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's changing now.
It is changing finally.
Yeah. But like back, and I got to a point where I was like, why am I doing this? I'm done. And I stopped. And then I started doing stand-up, years later.
Mm-hmm. So if you can think back to when you were just like post law school and trying to figure out what you wanted to do with yourself, did you have any comedians that you kind of looked up to or thought of as a role model figure?
I mean, I want to say yes. I just can't think of who. Like, I mean, anytime I saw a woman being funny,
That's what it was for me too.
it was like, I was like, wow, this is so cool. And it's so like, I just didn't understand it because I was like, women can do that. Women
Yep.
can be women. It's okay to like not focus on being attractive. Like it was just like mind blowing
Yeah.
to me.
And that's why, because I never really like looked up to stand-up comics when I was younger, because I wasn't really allowed to like watch anybody because, you know, you never knew what you were going to get. My parents wouldn't just let me watch whoever just in case they were swearing and stuff.
Yeah.
But I could watch I Love Lucy and Mary Tyler Moore, Taxi, Welcome Back, Kotter. I watched like all these shows, Dick Van Dyke Show, that had like really funny women on them.
Yeah.
And I was like, all these women are really attractive, but they're also really funny. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing when I dropped out of school around the same age and I went to Second City. I was just like, well, I guess I can make just gross faces and people will realize that I can be like ugly and funny.
You know what? When I started doing, I took an improv class and that's what I would make like ridiculous faces. I was like, this is funny. And they were like, please stop.
Yeah. And eventually you realize you don't want to, you're overdoing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would like just try to do something to try and make people think, okay, she can be weird. That works.
Yeah.
And in like, quirky always meant just like doing something strange with your face, even though that's not really what quirky means.
No,
but if you would say that in an improv class when you were 19, people would just go, just make a fucked up face. But yeah, I mean, so at what age did you end up starting to do stand up?
I mean, well, when I was living in New York, so I was I think I started when I was like 28 and then I stopped.
Well, what got you to move to New York in the first place?
So I wanted a change because I've lived here for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was a Pilates instructor. And I would train some celebrities here and there. And I was training this one celebrity who had become really friendly with me. Mm-hmm. And you know, I would tell her all the ridiculous stories about my like dating life or my family or whatever was going on. And she said to me one day, you should do stand up. The way that you speak, everything is funny. It's not intentionally funny, but it's funny. And the way you tell a story, you would do well in stand up, which was like all I needed to ever hear.
Mm-hmm.
And
just something to boost your confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was getting bored with Pilates too. I mean, you know, you can only
stretch people so much.
Yeah. Tell people to pull their belly button into their spine for so long. So I moved to New York because I thought, well, it's kind of a good comedy city. I need a change.
Absolutely.
I had a few friends out there and it was amazing, but like the cost of living was ridiculous.
Oh my God, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do it. I'm leaving for New York in the morning and I'm Airbnb-ing out there for 5 days, but
even the Airbnbs are expensive.
Airbnbs are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm staying in Brooklyn, like on the edge of Brooklyn and Queens, because it was the nicest, most spacious Airbnb with actually like there's like a yard. And I was like, a small yard. It looks like a burnt, it looks like it was burnt, but you know, whatever, it's a yard.
Yeah, it's a yard. A yard is a yard.
But yeah, I mean, it's an expensive city. How long were you in New York City?
A couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll definitely like drain your pockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of like when you and I first met and we started talking about stand up. And I remember you having had some weird experiences in the stand up community in Los Angeles. And I think our community overall is pretty good and pretty positive. And we have like a good core group of friends. And overall, I pretty much like everything. But I feel like didn't you start stand up and then kind of take a break from it for a bit and then get back into it out here?
Yeah. Well, in New York I started and I took a class in New York. And the instructor was a comic who had been doing it for a couple decades. Mm-hmm. And he was washed up. I mean, like his career had kind of dried up. And he had a little bit of that bitterness that happens, you know, when you can't control your career. But I didn't realize that going into it. And he was also just like gross, like a gross man. So I start doing I take his class, and he's like very interested in me and like wanting to develop me, but really he was hitting on me.
Yep.
And I mean, he was like disgusting. He was 25 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so obese that like he's the kind of person who would have to buy 2 airplane tickets. Like that level, which I do not find attractive. And also it was like we would have sessions where we would meet up and he would help me write, and he would tell people that it was a date.
Ooh, that's weird.
Yeah. Like as I was getting more and more into the community, like people were like, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not dating this guy. And then it kind of like fucked with my head, because to me, I was like, am I actually funny, or is this idiot telling me what I want to hear so that he can manipulate me into spending time with him?
Mm-hmm.
So it really kind of like, I was like, oh, I'm done with it. And so I stopped for a while because of that.
Yeah. And then at what point did you move out to Los Angeles?
I moved back here, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not good with time.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Time is really fucked up, especially once you get out here.
Yeah.
Like I've always tried to make up ways to be able to tell time. Like I've said before, like with hairstyles or with like just whatever you can to piece together to figure out when things happened. But I feel like you are just starting to get into a really good element here now that you've got like your podcast going and you're constantly performing. And I mean, what are some of the struggles? Like we all kind of go through stuff being in the stand-up community. Everybody can relate to the fact that we all, it's just not an easy path. Yeah. And so what are some of the things that you've gone through trying to make it happen for yourself?
I mean, so it's a nice community. People are pretty supportive for the most part. I think you really need to monitor who you're friends with in the community.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend who I was very close to for years, a comedian, who I found out recently had been telling people that I wasn't funny and to not book me on shows.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, you'll have to quietly tell me who this is on the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sucks when you're blindsided by people because I put a lot of trust in people pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's not like strangers out in the world. I'm not like traveling and like, oh, I trust that guy across the street. But like in your own community, it's easy to want to trust people because you want to make it like positive. You want to feel good about what you do. Like, I feel like most of us approach comedy as a way to connect and relate with people. And it's not as dark of a thing as a lot of the public has been made to know that comedy is.
Yeah, like, not necessarily.
Yeah, I meet people and they're like, oh, comics are all disturbed. I'm like, you can't just group people like that.
Well, I am. I'm disturbed.
But some people are, and that's fine.
Right.
And you spin it in a positive way and you try to make something good out of it. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But some people do comedy for all sorts of different fucking reasons, and there's no. And I'm friends with people that all are in it for different reasons. So I don't care what you're in it for. I just we all just hope we build, a good camaraderie in the process.
Yeah. I mean,
so whenever you're blindsided by somebody that sucks, it really hits you hard.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Well, and this person was much further along than me, and I would open for her quite a bit. And so it's like the shock that I would be further along had she not sullied my name,
Right.
Like it was that, I mean, I kind of knew she was a terrible human being. I mean, and it was one of those things where I was always making excuses for her and defending her.
Yeah.
But, I didn't think she would do that. But it was just kind of hurtful and upsetting that like this person kind of sabotaged me.
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous and unnecessary too.
Yeah.
I mean, as I've talked with most of my close friends, we don't look at anybody as competition that are our friends. It's just like,
I don't look at anyone as competition.
I don't either.
Even if they're like another Persian Jewish girl who's around I wouldn't look at that person. I would look at that person as like, Another, like a camaraderie.
Yeah. I mean, I've always just thought, if you can figure out a way to tell your story from a very personal standpoint, whatever that story is, whether it's a job that you used to have, like some people are former teachers, or like me, it's my relationship with my grandma and like being engaged and stuff right now, at least. And, I mean, you're not going to have material like anybody else. So fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't need to be a competition.
It doesn't need to be a competition.
No.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had a couple girlfriends out here that I thought were going to be just really close friends, and then they just kind of fall out of your life because they find somebody better or more famous, or there's just that ladder climbing mentality.
There is,
which is hard to deal with because you like being from Wisconsin. I'm like, once you're my friend, you're my friend.
Yeah,
and then it's just like kind of not true. But I mean, how do you feel about like friendships in general out here? I mean, have you dealt with any like personal feelings or just issues just because of being hurt by people?
I try not to. I mean, I'm pretty guarded in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes me a while to warm up to someone but I'm always open to more friendships, and I don't bring the baggage of whatever somebody did before into other relationships. I try not to, at least.
Yeah.
But it's also like, the older that you get and the more you're around it, the more you can see the signs up front.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a choice. Do I put up with this or do I pull away from it?
Yeah.
And I think in LA you can tell people who have strategic friendships.
Yes, you can.
I mean, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
They want something from you right away.
Well, I call those the people that look over your shoulder. Like you're having a conversation with somebody in a bar and then they just keep looking over your shoulder to see who else is walking in the door.
Yeah.
And you meet those kind of people pretty often.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's always pretty, like if somebody just can't hold eye contact with you for more than 5 minutes to like just have a conversation.
I just walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens pretty often, but you just get desensitized to it when you live here after a while. Yes. You're like, there's just another over the shoulder.
We should come up with a name.
Yeah,
for
there needs to be a name if anybody has any suggestions out there. So, I mean, besides friendships, has anything really thrown you since moving to LA and working in entertainment? Have there been any off-putting moments or times that you were like, God, I did something that was so shady, I feel like a sleazeball?
No, I haven't done anything where I hate myself.
Yeah,
no,
I haven't either. Thank God.
No, yeah. I mean, I haven't had sex with anyone for career opportunities.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Any takers?
If the right guy presents himself.
That's what I always say. I'm like, I never had sex with anybody that could benefit my career.
No.
It was just always out of feelings, man.
Yeah. That's kind of been my
good old-fashioned feels.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it just feels like the idea of it, it's gross. Like,
yeah.
You're going to force yourself to be attracted to someone because you think that by associating with that person, it's going to somehow trigger like more opportunities. It's so stupid. It's like
silly, yeah.
And it's also, it's like one of those things that it becomes very obvious to everyone around you.
Mm-hmm.
And people no longer respect you.
Yeah.
And they look at you as the person who slept their way up. So then more of those people pop up.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always said I've always told people, I'm like, I'd rather my career take 5 years or 7 years longer and I do it the right way and I have something to actually stand on than do something shady or try to skip some steps and then just not be prepared or, I feel
there's a reason why
things take time.
Like a 30-minute special 1 year into comedy.
Yeah.
Like, there's,
Yeah. It's definitely not something you want to try and breeze through quickly.
No.
You want to be properly trained and good.
Yeah.
Able to handle things.
Yeah.
So
and also being critical of yourself is a good thing.
Yeah.
And listening to your sets. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, people don't take criticism very well, period.
No.
Like I had a show last night, and I won't say who came up to me afterwards. He's a good friend, and he will be on the podcast soon, but him and I will probably want to talk about this. But he's like one of my favorite people in the comedy scene because he's super positive and will always give you like cool tags. Good ones though.
Yeah.
Like he'll just pick one joke that he's like, this would be a really good tag, or you need like a beat right here.
Yeah.
And he's usually right.
Yeah.
And so he came up to me after the show last night and was like, oh, you need a beat like right here. And I was like, fuck yeah, bro. I'm glad that you were at the show.
I appreciate, I mean, like the fact that somebody would even, because nobody really watches each other's sets.
No, they don't.
They really don't. Unless it's like, I'll watch my friend's sets. But
or if I'm featuring for somebody, I always watch their whole set.
You do?
Yeah. If somebody's headlining that I'm featuring for, yeah, I'll watch their whole set.
Okay.
Because usually it's their special in the making.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
So you want to kind of see
that. Yeah.
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 I want to see it and just be able to acknowledge it. I would never give feedback, of course.
No, I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't go up to Anthony Jeselnik and be like, hey, maybe this tag. Like he'd be like, what the fuck?
I mean, I do love watching other people do that though.
I know. Like how funny is that?
Like somebody who's like a terrible writer who just
goes up to somebody amazing and is like, how about this? And they're just like, what?
Yes. I wrote out a list of tags for you. I saw this at a show. I wrote out a list and it was like, I was like, oh my God, if this comedian ever gave me a list of tags, I would set it on fire.
Yeah.
And he to a much like a funny comic who had a really good set gave him this list of tags.
Oh, that's so awful.
It's so weird.
And I mean, you can only do that if you're equal to somebody.
Yeah.
If you're an equal, you can give tags.
Yeah.
Or like a level below or above. That's about it.
Yes.
One level though, not 5.
No.
Not 20.
No. Next time I see Chappelle, I'm going to go up to him and give him a bunch of tags after his set.
He would just be high and be like, what are you doing?
I mean, he would probably have like 8 security guards around him. They'd be like, bitch, get away.
Yeah, man. The last time I performed at Jay Davis's show on The Parlor, Chappelle showed up. And so everybody essentially got bumped from the show. And Chappelle did his hour special, which was totally fine. Like nobody would want to go up after Chappelle. No. That would be a nightmare.
That would be the worst.
It'd be the worst.
Like nobody would care.
No. And he smoked a bunch on stage and it was just very intimate and cool. And I don't know, I love the guy.
Yeah.
I like that he keeps people from using their cell phones or taking video and picture while he's on stage too.
Well, as he should. Yeah.
I
mean, you can't.
People actually pay attention.
Right. Well, and you can't put an undeveloped bit online and then ruin it for the special.
I think people in general are always on their phones in the audiences, period, now. But in LA, it's especially bad.
You think so?
I think so.
I haven't noticed a lot of people on their phones.
Yeah.
I mean, here and there, like I've had people like
not in the clubs,
snaps,
but in bigger shows and stuff. Like the Parlor is definitely a spot where a lot of people are selfing and stuff.
Yeah.
Or in order to get people to pay.
Taking Snapchats of you on stage, which I hate.
I know. I hate that too.
Hate.
The last thing you ever want is for like somebody, because like, for example, last night I had a show and it was a small show. It was Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So everyone had been drinking all day. So there wasn't a lot of people there, but it was, it was a small but mighty crowd.
Yeah.
But you don't want somebody videoing like 4 people watching you do stand-up.
No.
Never looks good on you.
No, and it's like out of context and people watch that and it doesn't look good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, besides having, some friends kind of be shade balls and stuff out here, I mean, what's maybe something that's the strangest or most off-putting thing that you've been exposed to out here?
Oh, God. In comedy?
It could be comedy or entertainment. I mean, like, for example, when I first moved to Los Angeles, I was excited when I would get auditions because, when you're new to a city, in Chicago, I used to audition for things all the time, especially in comedy because I was in Second City. So I would just get an invite. It wasn't that challenging. It wasn't that challenging to get the audition. To book stuff was still tough. But so when I first started getting auditions out here, I would say yes to everything because I was like, oh, it's a chance to work. Right. I just want to work.
Yeah.
And I drove to Bakersfield one day because there was an audition it was supposed to be for a fitness commercial, but I got there and they were like, this is for the Brazilian butt lift infomercials. And it was just a guy alone in a room with thongs and he was like telling girls to put on the thongs.
Oh my God.
Yes. And it was and so I ended up just leaving. I didn't do it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I drove all the way to Bakersfield, which is like 2 hours.
That's a long drive.
and came back and I told my agent, I was like,
your agent
my
sent
agent
you on
sent me.
this? Wow.
Yes. Mm-hmm. This was my first agent, and there's a reason why I stay with him.
Oh my God.
But I mean, I think people are unaware of what kind of things you're exposed to, especially as a woman in like the entertainment industry.
Yeah. I feel like I spend like 40% of my time trying to not get raped.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but it's so true.
Let me just walk out of this club, make it to my car without any sexual assault.
Yeah.
And usually it happens.
Yeah.
No, I've never been raped in comedy.
Not in comedy.
Thankfully, no.
Yeah.
No, I haven't been raped.
You don't think?
It's like the consent thing. It's like always blurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be, especially when booze is involved.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
I think a lot of people I've talked to have been like, oh yeah, guys are always, trying to bother me in the comedy scene. And I haven't really noticed it. And maybe it's just because I've been in a relationship the whole time I lived in LA.
Yeah.
Like people just got sick of trying.
I don't get hit on at all.
I don't feel like I get bothered.
I don't get hit on at all.
Most guys are pretty cool and respectful. In the comedy scene, at least,
Yeah.
Out in the world, you just never know what you're going to get.
In comedy, I've never had anyone be disgusting to me. Like,
yeah.
No, but I don't think I'm super approachable. Like, I don't think I'm the girl that people are like, well,
Ariel looks unfriendly, guys, is what she's saying.
Very unfriendly and mean. And like, I'm the kind of person that we are like, describe my demeanor. They would say, like, I asked somebody yesterday and they're like, bitch. Bitch is your vibe. Bitch.
You're like, oh, thank
yeah,
you.
I'm like, okay. Maybe that's a compliment now. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be my first thing for you.
Thank you. But that's because you know me.
I know you, yeah.
Yeah.
I always wonder what mine is because I'm sure I don't look super friendly all the time. Nobody does if you walk around smiling.
No.
Like guys ask you to do all the time where they're like, smile, honey. And you're like, if I was, you'd be so creeped out.
That's the most insulting thing that someone can say. And I do not, like, I will say something back when they say it because it's condescending and it's like, you don't fucking know me. You don't know why I'm not smiling and it's none of your business. And,
Last week I was walking around in our neighborhood. So Ariel and I live a couple blocks from each other. Was walking around in our neighborhood and I walked by like where the Chase Bank and stuff is. And this guy pulled over. And he gets out of the car and he goes, I saw you walking before and I saw you walking again. So this time I wanted to pull over and just tell you, you're very beautiful. And I was like, thank you. And he's like, are you taken? And I was like, I am. I'm engaged. I had just come from the gym, so I didn't have my ring on. And I was like, yeah, I am. But I appreciate the compliment. And he was like, you're welcome. And I just want you to have a lovely day. And it was just like a nice transaction. And I was like, hey, it's possible to hit on girls and not be super creepy about it.
Yeah. They're really, yes. You can, if you talk to somebody as if they're a human being, it usually does the job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? What do you think is going to happen next as far as your comedy career goes? Or what would you ideally like to be the next steps? You just started a new podcast with Aaron Darling.
I started a new podcast with Aaron Darling. It's called Ghosted Hunters. And we, it's like a true crime podcast about people getting ghosted.
On dates.
Yeah. And then I have a couple shows that I'm, pitching. And I'll keep doing stand-up. Eventually, I'll be on a talk show in some format.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Would you ever host a talk show?
Not alone.
Yeah.
I'd like to do a panel.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like a comedic The Talk or something like that?
Yeah.
That would be really cool, actually.
Yeah. I think that makes it more interesting. Yeah. To have the weight of an entire show on my shoulders, I wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have to I don't know. I always used to think when I was younger and started working in Chicago, I was like, oh, Kelly Ripa's job would be so cool. She just works for like an hour every morning.
Right.
But that's not actually how it works.
No. Also, you have to be universally likable to pull that off.
Yeah.
Kelly Ripa is universally likable.
Yeah, she's pretty damn likable.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not.
All right. So in closing, where can everybody find you on social media? How can we look you up on your podcast?
You can find me on Instagram at Ariel's Not a Mermaid. Twitter is Iranian Mermaid. My podcast right now that I have is Don't Be a Dick, and it's fun, and Natasha's been on it. And then Ghosted Hunters is coming out soon.
Amazing. And can you find Ghosted Hunters anywhere yet?
No, not yet. It'll be out the first week of June.
Okay, perfect. Because this will be airing in another week.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Then Ghosted Hunters is out. It's on iTunes, SoundCloud.
Perfect. And you can find me at NPH Comedy. You can follow the podcast at Future Role Model. You can follow the network at CPU Podcasts or Comedy Pop-Up. Follow everybody on the network. Everybody's amazing. Everybody's talented. Everybody's good friends. And we'll see you next time on Future Role Model.